The illegal dumping of chemical waste inadvertently affected a town's water supply, causing extreme contamination and toxicity to both humans and wildlife. Controversy and public outcry ensued as a result, with many deeming it as a conspiracy in order to cut costs and save a quick buck. This was never truly confirmed, as town officials worked to keep it under wraps. Rumors and speculation continued to run rampant, until panic began to overcome it, as no fresh water was available, instead being replaced by toxic sludge. Town officials didn't sign off on evacuation, trying to placate the public with the notion that everything was under control and that there was nothing to worry about. For a while, people either had to ration their remaining drinking water or rely on care packages, which contain water bottles from neighboring communities. They couldn't take showers or wash their clothes. With the chaos on the surface, disturbing and devastating deformities were found in the town's rat population, who inhabited the sewers beneath everyone's feet, by a team of environmental scientists led by 𝓵𝓮𝓮𝓿 and Ruth Adams. The rats' bodies were contorted into unnatural shapes and sizes. Some grew grotesque tumors and extra appendages, and others fused together into amorphous blobs. While nearly all of the rats were unable to withstand their mutations and died out, one managed to survive and escape the sewers. This initial form was grotesque, with exposed muscle tissue and inner organs, no fur to speak of, and bulging eyes. It was constantly in pain and agony due to its mutations, and was quite mindless. Outside, the rat scampered around, leaving blood trails and wailing up at the sky. Each movement, no matter how small, sent jolts of excruciating torture down its entire body. The cold wind blew against it like snow battering a house in the dead of winter. Phone calls began rolling in from terrified individuals who witnessed the disgusting monstrosity rummaging through their trash cans and trying to get into their houses. When the police showed up, they were horrified at what they saw. Not knowing what else to do, they tried to shoot it. The rat shrieked until it fell to the ground, riddled with bullets. Reluctantly, the police approached it, but were frozen in fear when the creature started to get it back up. They saw the bullets they fired slide out of the tissue, the afflicted areas fixing and reattaching itself as the bullets dropped. No matter how many times they shot it, the same thing would always happen. When the rat scampered away toward the forest, the police followed it. They lost sight of it for a while, the blood trail coming to a stop. One of them, Officer Woodard, came to a clearing and witnessing the creature on the ground, convulsing and shaking, howling and screaming. It began to extend rapidly, everything from its head, eyeballs, limbs and tail, though it was still covered in muscle tissue. The rat went silent, laying on the ground, appearing like a big slab of meat hanging on a hook at a butcher's shop. After a few moments, the police began approaching it again. None of them wanted to, but they had to make sure it was dead somehow. They shot it, nothing. It was only when they turned their backs again for only a brief moment that they heard the impact of their bullets falling to the ground, swiveling back around. The creature stood before them, a being of flesh and muscle that only half resembled the tiny little sewer rat it once was. With the police officers' horrific deaths discovered the next day, more and more sightings of the rat came to light, many of them actively witnessing the creature's continued mutations. It grew back its fur, and its features stabilized into a gangly, mutated rat creature. Wherever it went, mayhem and disarray followed. When surviving victims of its attacks started contracting diseases such as rabies, tularemia, and rat bite fever, common rat-borne ailments, it was found that the chemicals the rat was exposed to elevated these pathogens tenfold. This contributed to major outbreaks of these diseases that were much more devastating than normal. No matter what people tried, the rat would always resist. Sebastian and Ruth also made it clear that it would continue to evolve so long as the outside world continues to try to harm it. It was practically invincible. They convinced the town's officials to let everyone evacuate, which was further assisted by the governor and state police. Only healthy individuals were allowed to leave, with risk-level individuals forced to stay in order to avoid contamination of neighboring communities. The news of the rat, a mutated creature born from pure human irresponsibility, made headlines everywhere. Once every healthy person was evacuated, the town was effectively sealed off and abandoned. Nothing was able to kill the rat, so it was left to fend for itself within the newly formed confines of the disease and blood-ridden town. The risk-level individuals tried to take matter into their own hands, but failed. Soon enough, it was only the rat who remained, trapped behind walls crafted by an unapologetic mankind. The 9 months that followed could be described in many ways, the simplest being difficult. News and media outlets contributed to the mass hysteria that erupted around the rat, often propagating fear at the creature that had been cruelly devised. Many wanted it dead, even in the face of cold hard facts that what they desired was impossible. Some activists put forth that the rat was a poor animal who didn't know what it was doing, and thus should be treated humanly in both word and action. With the public's tendency to hate anything abnormal to the status quo, the creature was ultimately viewed as a vile monster. When the public's fears had been at an all-time high and tensions at their breaking point, the government made the conscious decision to abandon the town completely, foregoing any acknowledgement of its existence. A buffer zone was crafted around it, guarded 24/7, and efforts were made to curb the radiation that leaked out every now and then. Anyone foolish enough to try to travel to it would either be imprisoned or shot on sight. It was for everyone's greater good, though some people couldn't fathom that. There were the occasional folk who tried to sneak in, usually urban explorers or those simply fascinated by the circumstances of the town's degradation. They would always be found dead in the woods, contorted and mutated in gross, sickly ways, even if they took the proper precautions. None of them even reached the town. Sebastian and Ruth made the trick themselves, even reaching the outskirts, though through the trees, peering through the eye holes of their gas masks, they observed the silent ghost town. The streets were littered with the remains of the town's at-risk population who had perished at the hands of violence, illness, and mutations. It was a wasteland where humanity had no place. This was the domain of the rat, the creature who some say had taken up the role of protector and destroyer. Sebastian and Ruth took photos, but there were no signs of the rat. They were discovered by the guards, who arrested and had them both imprisoned. Quite sternly, they were told to stay away, if they knew what was good for them. Even as Sebastian recorded increasing levels of radiation, this went voluntarily unheard. When everyone was trying to figure out things in the long term, within the town itself, through guard towers, barbed wire and machine guns, the rat continued to live. It feasted upon the dead, human or otherwise. Nothing else lived beside it. Occasionally, it would return to the sewers, where it once belonged as a tiny little mammal, blissfully unaware of anything beyond its natural existence. Plenty of food was available down there in the form of its Breton rats. The rat would often drink the contaminated water, now a puke-colored brown, sludgy and bubbling, some faint psychedelic rainbows streaks in it. It was almost like a Jackson Pollock painting. Sometimes the guards would hear it screech, making their goosebumps rise up out of their skin. Everyone was under the assumption that the rat's features had stabilized into its current form, beyond some minor differences courtesy of the at-risk individuals fighting it, causing it harm and thus forcing it to mutate. While this was in fact the case, something else happened. Something unprecedented. One foggy night, excruciating pain struck the rat. It hit the creature hard, mainly because it had become accustomed, for just a moment, to peace. Everything about the rat began to fluctuate, its body widening and extending to extreme lengths, its bones and muscles repeatedly breaking, ripping, and tearing. The creature vomited copious amounts of the contaminated water mixed with blood as it writhed around. It jerked its head back, its vomit flying high in the air and landing back onto it, burning the skin and fur right off its body. Naked, devoid of fur and skin once more, and steaming with its own vomit, the rat grew to nearly 20 feet in size in all of 10 seconds. Trying to lumber forward, but unable, the giant meat screamed up at the sky, causing the guards to wake up. They rushed up the guard towers and tried to locate the source of the noise, but they saw nothing to the intense fog. One guard tried to radio those on another guard tower, but all he got back was violent coughs and mumbling static. Not long after, he and his fellow guards smelled something putrid, then began feeling horribly ill. They coughed up blood and phlegm, their mouths foamed. They grew pustules, tumors, boils, and extra limbs. They uncontrollably urinated and defecated all manners of fluids, all within a matter of minutes. Before each and everyone succumbed, they heard loud screeching and saw a jerking and spasming heap of meat through the fog. After what felt like so much time, yet wasn't at all, the rat's form finally stabilized again. Its snout long, its ears huge. With its long sausage-like tail swaying behind it, the creature tried to stand on its back feet, which felt like trying to remove 100-pound weights while being submerged in water. It tried desperately to keep itself upright, until it was able to balance. Slowly, clumsily, the rat stumbled forward, dragging itself along, the malfunctioning circulation to its feet flaring up and down in a consistent rhythm. The creature, every step felt like an eternity, a trip to the other side of the earth. Its destination was truly nowhere. The world had not known true chaos yet. Everyone's blood ran cold once they witnessed the horror that came to light. It was beyond comprehension, the mess of red muscle carved in white bone marbling, lumbering through the forest and into human-inhabited areas. The rat passed animals, like those of squirrels, chipmunks, deer and birds, who would rapidly mutate in a few short minutes. When the creature reached a local highway, its very presence caused traffic to come to a grinding halt. Initially, people were too stunned to move. A whole slew of contrasting emotions flooded their minds, none of them sure what to think. The rat looked down at them, its eyes dry from being unable to blink. It let out slow garbling squeaks and bellows. What snapped the humans out of their daze was the creature beginning to heave, like it was coughing something up. It then let a shriek off so loud, so high-pitched, so powerful that it burst and ruptured everyone's eardrums and rattled their bones. They tried to run, but their impending mutations made that action futile. The rat encountered a new town. battling through suburban areas and neighborhoods. Home and other structures tumbled to the ground, often trapping its inhabitants within them. The screaming was horrific, and the crying was even worse. The town's emergency preparedness protocols were tested to their limits, but even these were rendered completely useless. People tried to flee with no cars. They couldn't get to a hospital or a shelter, because there were none anymore. In a short amount of time, they began to mutate and die. Sometimes the rat would burst in multiple places, causing blood, muscle tissue and bone fragments to spew out in every direction. It would then regenerate the missing pieces bit by bit. Other times it would stop, trying to readjust itself and regain its balance. It took many trials and errors until the rat managed to learn how to do so properly. In a day, it took something and made it nothing. All the sirens and warning sounds stopped, putting everything at a standstill. The only sounds were the drift of plastic bags floating through the wind or pieces of destroyed buildings falling down the ground. Emerging on what was once a utility road, the rat collapsed, squealing in agony as its body tried to endure another mutation. The creature's size went up by nearly 70 feet, growing back the grey fur it once possessed. Its skull bulged and swelled, widening its eyes with it, and its insides rearranged and contorted in all different directions. The rat's teeth grew longer, sharper, cutting its gross tongue as it dragged itself along, and causing the blood to fall down to the ground below. Its needle-like claws shredded the asphalt and cement beneath its feet. With full control over its tail, the creature wiped it back and forth, destroying the ruins of other nearby buildings even further. When its new form stabilized, the rat looked up at the sky, its head tilted to the side, its teeth grinding together, its blood leaking off of its eyelids, mouth and ears. The creature looked down at itself, bellowing so loud it shook everything around it. With all the pain coursing through its body, the rat was in a sort of shock. All it did was stare at itself, bellowing, squeaking. Rest assured, it did scream. The rat destroyed everything in its path. Massive waves of people died in the carnage. It had evolved the ability to dig, mainly to get away from the bullets and missiles being shot at it. This way, it could travel somewhere in an instant, leaving everyone only guessing at its location. No longer mindless, the creature was becoming at least somewhat sentient. All it knew besides pain was that the little ants beneath its feet were why it was like this. The cause, humans, and effect, the pain, two very simple notions to base an objective on. Without the cause to negate the effect, that was its objective. That might not make sense to us, because obviously weeding out the cause of the effect doesn't negate the effect. However, to something that suffers endlessly, making the cause feel the effect is a remedy in of itself. It took a lot of time and a whole lot of attention seeking for Sebastian and Ruth to make this apparent. The rat was simply taking its revenge. Out of all the emotions it could theoretically feel, only two boiled up to the surface: pain and hate. Everything the military tried failed horribly. It was impervious to everything from bullets to missiles to thermonuclear warheads. There was a sort of beauty in its destruction, but there were no pretty flowers. People needed a solution, lest it be too late. They had to save themselves in one way or another. Nothing could be truly invincible. Technology had advanced to new heights. What would kill the rat? It was the most obvious question on everyone's minds. No one had answers. Eventually, they found the only weapon it was susceptible to: its own kind. In a daring international operation, an artificially created bioweapon was forced directly into the rat. one that would impede its ability to mutate any further and would rapidly decay its cells. Very much a suicide mission. Those who took part knew that it was likely they wouldn't return. Many volunteers were horrifically mutated, but it worked. The rat was killed, but no one realized that they breached the point of no return, the second the idea was even conceived. After its death, the creature's decaying body hosted a sort of mutagenic disease, one that carried on living. As Sebastian stated, it would live in some way, no matter what. Combining this with the bioweapon that was launched into the rat, it worked to decay every bit of its new hosts and mutate them into new versions of the creature, like asexual reproduction into its offspring. The disease was spread every possible way and could mutate an entire body in under 30 seconds. No one lived to see their new forms. At first, it was thought that the only way to stop it was to kill those who had it, but the disease worked even in death, and those who died reanimated. Something new made its home with the human race, intending to transform us into what it was, mutating us to death and rebirthing as one of it. In the end, the rat accomplished its objective. Its fundamental existence was a doom spiral because we were the cause and the effect is killing us. We inflicted the pain, the discomfort, and the torture, and now it's being spat back at us with vengeance.